Hello, welcome to Simcha, a celebration of life. I'm your host, Nikki Wallman. Kindertransport survivor, artist and sculptor Frank Meisler once said, "Shapes and appearances vary and change as you touch them, and doors will open to reveal the unexpected. These are facts I learned in my childhood. Nothing is ever quite what it seems." Recently, we met Frank Meisler at his gallery in the old city of Jaffa, Israel, and gleaned a better understanding of this man.
I was born in East Germany, obviously before the war, experienced the Nazis, and in 1938 the British government permitted up to 10,000 Jewish children to leave Germany, Austria, and come to England, provided that they came without their families, without their parents. And I left my town together with a small group of other children, Jewish and anti-fascist, and arrived in Liverpool Street Station after a 4-day journey from Danzig, my hometown, to London. Everybody came through there. Everybody arrived in Liverpool Street Station, all the 10,000 children, over a period of a year or so, from that big pogrom, Kristallnacht, until the outbreak of the war. First of all, it was a very tense period because it was only days before the outbreak of the war. At the same time, children are because to see and so on, and none of us, neither our parents nor anybody else, could visualize the war. So we thought of it as a short from our parents, but the rumors filtered through from the German Jewish refugee community of these things happening in Auschwitz, Buchenwald. So slowly we understood that the chances of our ever seeing our parents again were very slim indeed. Unlike most, very fortunate because my sister is already in Germany from Berlin and so on, and so I had guardians. I had to learn, went to my education. At some point I volunteered for the Air Force. I promised my father, it was one of the last things I promised him before we parted, that I'd go to university. He said, "Whatever happens, go and study, make something of yourself." Now, art wasn't taught in a university. That was art school. And I needed to be respectable for my father, so I went to the nearest thing that I could think of, which was architecture. And I studied architecture for 5 years. But I had two options, to go to Paris, where I was offered a job, or to come here. And I preferred to come here and take a job as an architect. And I was very fed up with architecture, really, because there was no challenge in architecture at that time. Now, I did notice that there was a gap in sort of souvenirs and things. So I began to, on the side, work with a few souvenir shops and did some things in wood and carried on with this for quite a while, and then switched to metal sculpting in a larger scale, which was a daring step because I had 2 kids already and a wife, and you can't be a starving artist at that point in your life. But I was very fortunate because it worked, and at some point I was able to wave architecture goodbye without regret. And so I've never looked back. When I was a child in Danzig, we were neighbors with the second highest ranking Nazi of the town, and I used to play with his daughter in our house and in their house, and he had a wonderful selection of uniforms, Nazi uniforms, brown ones, green ones, all sorts of boots, whatever, and we used to play charades with these things. And he used to ask me to spell things because he was lousy at spelling. He was writing his biography. So in the middle of lying on the carpet and playing with his daughter, he would sort of say, "Frank, how do you spell knife?" And I would spell knife for him and stuff like that. There is no such thing as absolute evil and no such thing as absolute good. And you can come across these curious anomalies where an evil thing has its human side, and where the human side has its evil aspect also. That much I've learned. The fact that I try to create images that change different aspects. This is the aspect of the human character. What you see on the outside is not what you get on the inside, and vice versa. So I try to stress that rather than just make a statement, there it is, take it or leave it, because I know human nature is not like that. My problem with Germany, for example, is not with Hitler, because Hitler was a lunatic, let's say, and you find many of those in asylums. But why did the entire nation follow a lunatic, ultimately not to their benefit even, but into a situation where they lost hundreds of thousands of their own people and a good part of their land? There are no answers to many things that I find obnoxious either. There is no such thing as an integral, uncomplex human being. It's mostly human. It's all human beings, really. Give them power and they'll abuse it as well as use it. There's ambivalence in all human activity. Things are partly good and partly bad, partly humorous and partly tragic. My sculptures also allow you to see it in different ways. And so I develop things that work here and work there. That means that there's a theme running through many of the sculptures. The subjects, though, vary. I'm not a religious man at all, but there's a traditional aspect to Judaica, especially as Jews were never allowed to be craftsmen or artisans in medieval times in Europe. The Judaica I do is a kind of answer to what I think was a great injustice to Jewish ritual objects. I try to do this in the form of a design challenge. The difference between the lighter themes and the heavier ones of Holocaust memorials, I don't see them as a problem from my point of view. I can create this and I can create that. I have a feeling that some of my humor is black humor, and that might be the bridging element between this and that. And the one thing that where you cannot include sly humor, for example, obviously are religious objects, but I do see them as challenges of Judaica, a tradition that comes from way back, and that I'd like to pick up and carry on as best I can. So there's no humor in a mezuzah, but you can do that well and you can do it less well, and I try to do it better. I like to do these things. They're good fun. I enjoy them. When it is indoor material, I usually use the things that you see here. Metal, pewter usually with silver plating and gold plating and so on. Outside sculptures has to be bronze, because bronze is a wonderful outdoor material, a material that matures beautifully. And so when I make things of bronze, I know that I can leave it for millennia, and it'll improve. I think I'm fascinated and intrigued always by what I would call the general human dilemma, which we all share. We are all frightened people. We are all people who pretend to be bigger than we are. We are people with failures who emphasize their successes. We all go from birth to death,
And on the way, we are just human beings, ultimately. And those tensions and those contrasts and the reality behind these facades, they are the ones that intrigue me.
Well, that's all we have time for this week. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, we would love to hear from you. So please find us on Facebook at Spirit Sister Productions Network. As always, from me, Nikki, and the entire team, shalom and have a safe and peaceful week.